you watched my previous video, you'll know that the Steam Deck is my baby, but it had me thinking a little bit, as something I said in that video came up. I need to play my Switch more, so I did, and I think you probably should too. Before I get really into the meat of this video, how about you subscribe to the channel? I'd really love you to not miss out on content like this, and it would be a benefit to me as it shows you want to see more gaming content, which I really like making. Here's the deal though, if you are an older mid-30s gamer like me, you're no doubt always wondering how the hell you managed to play 8+ hours a day of Call of Duty back in the mid-2000s. I'm the same. I literally can't believe that in my early 20s I managed a fairly intense part-time / full-time job, university, a fairly active social life, and still played an unhealthy amount of Xbox 360 and PS3 games. Any console that lets me now play for 10 to 30 minutes here and there is a godsend, and that's why I love the Steam Deck. When I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, waiting for a video to render, just hanging around.
Just hanging around.
I like something to at least occupy my time. I, probably like you, obviously back in the day bought the Nintendo Switch with big ambitions and great intentions for gaming on the go. For me, it was to play games, as I say, on the go, or like how I just mentioned. I thought of it as a little stopgap gaming gadget. It helped that I really wanted to play two of the best games of the past decade, Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, and it's worth noting I didn't actually pick up my Switch at launch. I waited a little bit to see what games came out. So after completing Mario, playing Zelda for about 4 hours, I bought a few more games, and then I'm ashamed to say this, I just relegated the Nintendo Switch to a cupboard, or a cabinet. Is it a cabinet? A cupboard in my TV cabinet. Yeah, I know. That sense of bonding that we're feeling right now is, I think it's something that most of us 30+ gamers start to feel after a period of time. You bought a new console that you never play, and I'm anxiously looking at my PS5, come to think of it, when I even said that out loud. To make matters worse, as soon as I saw the Switch OLED, I kinda knew that I had to have it. I figured that the bigger, better screen might make me play games on it a little bit more. Well, it didn't, at least not until recently, that is. So I alluded to this in my Steam Deck video, but I feel like a gamer again, if that makes sense. And that means, you guessed it, I dusted off the Switch, and I think you probably should too. I need to talk a little bit further about why I'm actually playing more Switch games and the Switch more itself. The major reason is to justify owning one. I'd be lying if that wasn't the main reason. I absolutely hate wasting money on things and having two Switches. Yes, I have two. One, though, does now belong to my partner. Not being played, at least both of these not being played, felt a little bit stupid and not very good financially. Another reason is the insane position that Nintendo has taken with regards to emulation over the past few months. I love emulation. Emulation is great. I just hate how Nintendo is handling this, and yes, it means I'm sort of sorry for giving up on Switch emulation, at least for a little while, until things start to kind of die down. I'll continue to emulate my old Game Boy games and love retro handhelds, so don't worry about that. I'll still continue emulation. The thing is, I can't help it. The shutdown of projects like Yuzu and the frustration I've had trying to run Switch games on my mobile phone, the S24 Ultra, has left a really bad taste in my mouth, and as I said earlier, it helps that I own an LCD Switch and an OLED Switch. It's not as annoying having to move back to original hardware, if you already own it, that is. And I'll also state now that I don't play my Switch using the dock. I don't even think I took it out of the box when I bought that OLED version. I think handheld is the way to play, in my opinion, because blown up games do look awful on a 4K screen unless you're happy to play at maybe upscaled 1080p. One of the biggest side bonuses though is the size decrease over the Steam Deck, and this is something I didn't necessarily think of until I picked this up again. If I had to take one device with me that won't necessarily make an impact on the space in a carry-on suitcase, or even worse, my bag or my rucksack, for me it's probably going to be the Switch every single time. And that's coming from someone who absolutely loves the Steam Deck. There's something about the hardware on the OLED model as well. It's just so nice to even look at and to hold. I picked up some ergonomic handles and a frame that definitely make it a lot more comfy, and a little carry case from TomTok that I do love as well. I'll leave a link down below for those of you who want to check them out for your own Switch down in the comment sections below. Like I say, the hardware, the buttons feel incredible, the D-pad is incredible, the kickstand is super strong, and I like the fact that it will stay at different positions across that axis. There just is lots of attention to detail that to me is really, really important from a handheld console. I've basically beaten up my Switch OLED as well, and it's still practically pristine. And there's no Joy-Con drift to report either, so touch wood, hopefully that does never happen, and it means this will serve me long into the future. Let's talk a bit about the games for a second, because I think there are a few reasons that especially older gamers should be playing more Switch full stop, and the game library is one of those. The biggest is predominantly the physical game library though, although that is a somewhat double-edged sword because these games are still ridiculously overpriced in a lot of cases, unless you're happy to buy used, in which case you might get a good deal. So as nice as downloading games can be and not having to mess around with cartridges and CDs and all that kind of thing, trust me, I do have a few digital-only titles on this device, including Red Dead Redemption. The ability to plug in a cart and play a full game without updates or without an internet connection or space running out is way more freeing than I actually thought it would be. If I, for instance, go away for the weekend or I'm travelling, I just take a few games and I'm set. I don't need to worry about having updates and stuff. There's also another thing at play as well that I think a lot of people won't necessarily even think about. And this is almost like a thought exercise, so think for a second about how big your current game library is. That's everything. I'd wager you play a lot of consoles and maybe you play PC, and you're probably into the hundreds of games, that is. Is that a fair assumption? I think it probably is. Now think about how many of those games you've actually played or have any intention of playing. I bet that probably drops down to below the 50 mark, and that's at the high end. That's precisely why I've liked playing my Switch again. Exclusive games are definitely a great place to start, and it sounds like I'm cheerleading for Nintendo here, but they do have some exceptional first-party games. In fact, I'm actually working my way through Zelda Tears of the Kingdom right now. Then I'll probably get around to completing Pokemon Scarlet. That's actually all I have on the agenda for now. Maybe in the future I'll start Luigi's Mansion 3, but I'm not being too precise because picking up and playing just a handful of games has really taken the stress, because I do find it stressful finding something to unwind with. You probably agree with me there as well. Every single time I want to play some games is definitely a really nice addition. Does that make sense? I think here's another analogy. I'd liken it to a camera. Sometimes the more features a camera has, the more buttons, the more extras that it has, the less creative you can be, as the boundaries for creativity are a little bit too broad. So within a framework, or in this case, with a limited pool of games to play and choose from, you just enjoy what is available to you. I'm not second guessing how long a level will take or how long I have to sit down and play or put several hours in. I just pause, put it on charge, then come back and pick up where I left off. If I don't like it, I throw in another game cartridge, and there aren't that many, so I have to make sure I do like a lot of these games, and in a lot of cases it has worked. I'll admit that doing that though isn't quite as nice as Quick Resume on Steam Deck, but it's definitely not a million miles away. If you're like me though and you want a way to unwind away from, let's say, a traditional gaming setup, I think the Switch is a great place to start, or something you definitely need to go ahead and pick up again and start playing a lot more. Even, I will say, the graphics, because I know a lot of people will go in the comments and talk about the graphics. I don't care about that too much. Then again, I'm not someone who cares about graphics anyway. To me, Zelda, for instance, looks as good as any Unreal Engine 5 game because it has a distinct art style and art direction that is within the bounds of what the hardware is capable. It all comes back around, if that makes sense, to that same argument that limitations make it quite good. Another thing I didn't mention is that I think is also important is that I'm hoping lots of you will agree, big, huge, open world, mega scope games are actually quite daunting to play, and even those games as a live service games are horrendous. I've struggled with lots of games where there isn't a tight narrative or even a closed pathway. That sounds ridiculous to say, coming from the games I played in the past. Honestly, I do think it does sound insane. I just don't want too much freedom in a game. I want almost instant gratification and a fairly middling skill ceiling or skill graph, would it be? And I want to make obvious progress. Too many games now, I think, just don't care about your time. And for instance, Assassin's Creed has ballooned into something that is just a time sink, and it can feel like a chore. It helps that most Nintendo games, maybe save the Zelda series, are designed to be open to players of almost any skill level. And this is a family console after all, so you can dip in and out without extremely steep learning curves and long-winded stories and maybe control schemes that you need to remember every time you come back. This definitely sounds like I'm giving Nintendo a pass for some stupid shit over the past few years. Yeah, I do think the company needs to stop being idiots, and the Switch 2 should be a better console with more power under the hood. I'm not denying that, but that's the future. I'm talking about me, my gaming habits, and why I think you might want to try picking up the Switch again if it did collect dust like it has for me. I think give it another go, get it out of storage, and enjoy this limited little console.